Okay. Hello, everyone, and wishing you all a very happy new year and a warm welcome to the first Biketivist Forum for the year 2023. My name is Sandhya Ladha, and I'm the Advocacy and Policy Director at SVBC. And along with me, I have other advocacy staff that include Diana, Anthony, and Heather. Say hi, everyone, on your screens. I'd like to start off this new year by saying each and every one of you here are important pillars for improving bike safety in the area, because it is you and you all together who are the bike movement and who make the bike movement. So thank you for all the time and effort you put into this thankless job, and thank you for joining us today. Before we jump into the agenda, we have a quick announcement from Amy Ashton, our board chair. So off to you, Amy.
Yeah, I don't want to take too much of your time. I know there's a lot of big items tonight, but as many of you know or maybe don't know, the executive director, Shiloh Ballard, intends to step down from her role. And we, as the board of directors, have formally started the search for a new executive director. So very exciting. The position is posted at the SVBC website. It's on Indeed. It's at several nonprofit job boards. And I'm here just to make sure you all know about it, because you all have a great position. You know all the local bike leaders. You are the local bike leaders. You have connections to potential candidates for the role. So I'm here to post my email and the position where it's located on our on the SVBC website. If you or someone you know, friends, family, coworkers, anyone you can think of might be a good match for the position or might be interested in it, please send them the information, word of mouth, email, however you want to communicate that. You can send me an email if you have questions in particular about the role. But again, as our local team folks, you know everyone who's in the bike movement and all the people that might be an amazing executive director. So again, if anyone has any ideas for candidates, forward them the link, email me. And I think that's really all I wanted to say. Anything else you could think of, Sandhya, that I'm forgetting?
No, I think you covered it all. Yeah, if you have any questions about the ED search, if you have any great ideas on how we should look for an ED, please shoot all your questions, thoughts, suggestions to Amy.
Yeah, that's a good point too, Sandhya. If anyone has a particular, for example, if you're a member of a bicycle organization and they have a job board or a message board, if you could help us by posting this, that would be absolutely amazing, because the more we can get the word out, the better candidates we'll get and the more successful our organization will be. So thank you everyone for your time, and have a great meeting tonight.
Thanks, Amy. And with that, let's get back to our presentation here. So let's start off with some meeting guidelines, which we review every few months. So SVBC wants to create a welcoming space for everyone, regardless of background and experience. And here are a couple of guidelines we've come up with to help foster this collaboration. This also applies to the local team breakout rooms, which will be the second hour of this meeting. So make space, take space, be aware of how much time you're talking versus listening. Allow everyone else to speak up. Encourage people who've not been participating too much also to share their thoughts. Be respectful of one another and our differences. Do not interrupt when somebody else is speaking. Stay on topic and try to focus on topics relevant to the group. Always assume good intent. And a few online meeting basics. Please rename yourself to include your city and pronouns. Please ask questions via the chat, and please stay muted until we begin the breakout sessions. You can unmute yourself if you have any pressing questions. You're always allowed to unmute and interrupt the person speaking if there's any pressing question, or always use chat for putting your questions. Here is a quick agenda for today. We just finished a quick round of welcomes. We'll be going over the local team toolkit presentation tonight, which Heather from our staff team will cover. Then I'll be going over the policy agenda. Then we'll wrap up and talk about reviewing year 2022 and planning for 2023. So SVBC first published its local team toolkit in 2020. This is the time when we began our Biketivist Forum series. So it's been 3 years now. But since then, so much has changed. All the local teams have grown multifold. They've been doing bike rides. They've been doing bike rides with council members, bike repair events, have been running multiple advocacy campaigns, have had so many wins. And similarly, how SVBC supports these local teams has also changed so much. So this led us to work on revamping the current version of the local team toolkit, which Heather has been working for several months. So Heather will deep dive into the toolkit shortly. Separately, SVBC has also released its first ever policy agenda in 2020, again, when we began our Biketivist Forum series. The policy agenda is a comprehensive list of all policies SVBC supports and advocates for. Last year, in the month of May, SVBC adopted its very first strategic plan, and the strategic plan identifies strategies and key activities. This led to the revamping of our policy agenda so that the policy agenda is in alignment with goals and activities and strategies that are in the strategic plan. So we'll go over the newly drafted policy agenda. While we're presenting both of these documents to you, these are still continuing to be living documents for some time. So after today's presentation, we'll send out the policy agenda and we'll send out the local team toolkit to all of you. And you can review at your own time. And if you have any suggestions, changes, additions, some things that you really, really don't like or something you think are missing, please send all those comments to us by next Wednesday. So we'll make sure everything is incorporated. And the final documents or the final toolkit and the policy agenda should be ready sometime by mid of February. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Heather to take it away.
Hi, all. As Sandhya said, I'm Heather Walnick. I'm on the advocacy team, and I'm going to talk about it's now the 2023 toolkit. So first, we'll drop a link in the chat. Oh, wait, I'm still back on the intro. That's okay. We'll drop a link in the chat so you can take a look. You won't be able to download, but it's visible and all the links out, the external links should work. And we've been really working on the meat of this, so it's not in its pretty graphically inclined version yet. And we'll be putting it on a website for anyone who wants to work with it online instead of a PDF download. I wanted to thank the local team leads for giving some input already on this, and I've incorporated as much of it as I could. And if anyone else has additional feedback, we're more than open to it. We're going to be periodically updating this, so please let us know if you have any suggestions on topics that should be covered that we didn't, or on any how-tos you need or anything like that. Okay, next slide. So the table of contents it's broken into 3 parts. We've got about SVBC, and this section is going to lay out the groundwork for any new members or members that need a refresher on how our organization works and our advocacy team and what our relationship is with the local teams. And it's important for all, I think, of our local team members to have a basic understanding of how the organization works, so that it can influence requests that you make of us, or you can understand a little bit better how it works. This next section is on effective local teams. What's the secret sauce of running a local team? We've come up with some components we've seen that have been really effective in keeping teams on track and accomplishing goals. And that is really the bulk of this document. And then the third section is resources. Fundamentally, SVBC's relationship with the local teams is that of leader and mentor. We're hoping to teach and cultivate the local team members to advocate for your own causes within your own communities. So we offer how-tos, trainings, forums, guidance, tech tools, more. Next slide, please. So I'm going to run through the basics of SVBC. Our mission is to build healthier and more just communities by making bicycling safe and accessible for everyone. And our goal is to increase the number and diversity of people using bicycles for everyday transportation. I want to highlight everyday transportation in this goal because our staff focuses our time mainly on urban routes and making them accessible for all riders. We love rec riders, but making rec riding is not the focus and where we'll be spending the majority of our time. But this is exactly why we have the local team model, because we can leverage you, the Biketivists, to do the work that we don't have the staff time to take on. Our strategies are programs, pedal power, people-centered streets and communities. At our July Biketivist Forum last year, our executive director, Shiloh, went through our 2025 strategic plan, and I encourage everyone to watch the video if you missed it, or you can read our 2025 strategic plan on our website, and we can drop the link in the chat there too. And then lastly, but not lastly, is our DEI values, which are equity, access, community power, sustainability, and empathy. And we try to overlay these values on all of our programs, all of our initiatives, all of our relationships. And you can read more on our website. The page is Cultural Humility and Social Justice Framework and Goals. And we can drop a link in the chat for that as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so more on the inner workings of SVBC. Our advocacy team's ability to support you in your work is somewhat limited. We have work plans, we have bandwidth, and we have a policy agenda that we need to follow. So our advocacy staff is currently at 3.5. I'm the part-time person, and so we're looking for another full-time person currently. But we are covering 2 counties, 35 cities. We have 9 local teams, and we're hoping to expand to 10. And like any organization, we have to work plan to use our time wisely. So through the work plans, we try to anticipate our bandwidth, but we know things always come up. Advocacy is very fluid. But we have to keep our eye on the prize, and Shiloh is very good at reminding us to consider a request and how it relates to our overarching goals, which is really hard because we want to do it all just like you do. Our policy agenda is another way we think about our work and what fits in our time and what is outside of our time, and Sandhya will be talking a lot more about that later. All of this is to say that there might be times that something seems critically important to you or your team, and it just might not fit into what we consider the biggest impact toward reaching our collective goals. It just also might just not fit into our workday, and we ask that everyone just be, really kind about that, because we are humans too, and we do have to have other things in our lives. Our policy advisory committee is made up of board members, current and former. We have some outside expertise, we have some partner representation, and we have local team members. We'll be recruiting for more members soon, so stay tuned. And the committee helps to set the policy agenda, like what Sandhya is just going to be going over. And they also take up issues that are outside of the policy agenda that we've been requested to weigh in on. An example being on the last November ballot, we had 2 measures that came up, 2 local measures that we were asked to support. And we worked with the PAC to determine that we would do so. Next slide, please. So this is the profile of an effective team. This is section 3 in the document. If you want to glance through it, like I said, it is the bulk of the document. So I'm not going to be going in through every detailed section here, but these are the 5 things that we have found have made an effective team. that a team that is cohesive, long lasting, and is reaching, having success. So we'll come back to this in a minute, but I want to just highlight some themes that throughout that one, that section of the document, which are, building relationships, having respect for your teammates, being as outgoing as you can to bring in as many people as you can, and having, setting goals that are realistic, short-term and long-term. But short-term really, feeds the team to see the wins, to keep going. So we'll be back to that in just a minute. Next slide, please. The final section of the document is resources. So we have a lot that we do to help, to train, to guide, to try to put things in a place where if you want to have a certain type of event, we can support it. Or how do you rent equipment from us, borrow equipment from us? I shouldn't say rent, borrow equipment from us. We also do have some small funds for our local teams for needed events and things like that. And we're always adding to this. So if you have any ideas on other tools or things that might help the team, or other tech tools you want us to look at to see if we can actually, incorporate that, please just let us know. So if you can go back one slide to the profile of the effective team. Before we go on to Q&A, I wanted to just take a moment to see where the teams are in this. So feel free to unmute yourself and speak, but I'm going to ask, just for time, that we try to only have one speaker per team. So if anyone wants to, let's just give a few minutes to read, and then if anyone wants to speak up from a local team on how you're doing on this.
Anyone from the team leaders want to speak? Oh, got a sneak peek into this local team toolkit last week.
I guess I would say that it's a great resource. It's got a lot of good information on it. And so I think, if people are wanting to learn more about how local teams work and all that, and what resources are available, it's really good.
Just because you're visible to me, Nick from Sunnyvale. How are you guys doing on this? Do you have at least 5 active team members that are meeting pretty regularly?
I think we probably have 3 and change, and then a lot of other people kind of are partials, that are actively showing up to every one. But we have a lot recently because we've been talking about Sunnyvale's upcoming policy choices. Essentially, like, they come up every year, and we have to talk about the ones that are on deck. And they're basically things around the city that we want to take a position on and try to meet with city council members, and that we've had a lot of recent meetings about that. Various new city council members we're trying to get in front of and talk to them about the things that we are concerned about. We're kind of working our way through the list. One other thing that, we do have a regular monthly meeting, and then we also have this meeting, although tonight we're going to bail out of SVBC and go and try to influence the bottom of the Stevens Creek Trail, the extension that's happening down to Fremont Ave with the city. So we're not dissing you on purpose, but we do need to go take care of that.
You're forgiven.
Thank you.
I think that's a great example of a shared purpose, that you have a lot of engagement right now because the team is really working on something together. How about anyone here from San Mateo? Okay, I hear silence. Any other teams? I mean, this is the point of this is just to show that, you know, our teams are in various stages of this. And so we want to inspire each other to sort of to, you know, get the teams more stronger, and also to make those connections. You know, if you're having trouble finding partners, you can get tips from another team on how they were able to network to get some partners to help to advocate and things like that. Anyone else? Just give it one more minute. Anyone else want to share?
Yeah, I think I answered the wrong thing for the Palo Alto team, but yeah, we do have definitely, we have about 7 or 8 consistent members to our team, and we have different people with different strengths. For example, a couple of people who really have good relationships with the city staff and elected officials, so that helps. And a lot of people who are in, you know, others who are willing to like jump in and help out with, you know, with digging up information about things, or, you know, drafting letters and all that kind of stuff. And I guess what we probably need to work more on is really focusing on our 3 to 5 goals for the year.
Thanks. Okay. Oh, go ahead.
I'll speak up. And I apologize, I'm late this evening. I'm at work. I will say for Bike Sunnyvale, one thing that we have are members who keep some consistent events going, such as the bike repairs. We just started doing happy hours. We hope to have another one. And at things like the bike repair, we have some of the people who are more active in the working with the city staff and elected officials and doing the advocacies. For instance, Francis was at our bike repair this weekend and getting us to sign petitions. So what I gather from that, or what I would recommend, is not everybody's going to be into the advocacy side for whatever reasons, but as long as we can keep consistent events, like the bike repairs, like the happy hours, whatever else we do, we can pull people in and get them interested. And that would be my 2 bits on that.
Thanks. I'm going to open it up for Q&A too. Feel free to share more about the local team or ask questions.
I just wanted to add
where we are on time. Sorry.
Sorry, I just wanted to add a +1 on what Hans just mentioned, that not everyone is going to be interested in advocating for stuff or will be interested in policy all the time, because there might be some people who are just interested in coming on bike rides, and there might be people who are only interested in helping out at bike repair events or tabling, or somebody might want to host events for you. So it's really important that you figure out where is the interest of your team members, and give their, like, identify what are the tasks they can take up, or where can the team use their skill sets, so that they are also motivated and want to come back to your team. Because if you're only focused on one thing alone, you will automatically demotivate all the 10 people who are not interested in that one thing. And we have a couple hands raised. Bruce?
I think Tim might have gone first, but I can talk. That's okay with Tim.
Go for it.
All right. So yeah, Bruce England for the Mountain View team, collaborating with the Los Altos team with Maddie Hamilton. A couple of points that may or may not have been raised already. One is the number of people we have. This was mentioned at Sunnyvale too. that the number of people we have fluctuates. Sometimes we get a good number of people who are participating, and sometimes it drops to a lower number. And what we have to do is scale, which is not a big deal. We just have to be aware we need to do it. That sometimes individuals have to take a bigger load because we can't spread it across numbers. But similarly, when more people come on, then people who have the big loads need to drop off some of that load so that the other people can pick it up. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is collaboration with neighboring teams. So as I mentioned, Mountain View's collaborating with Los Altos, but we also talk a lot with the Palo Alto team and the Sunnyvale team, and also to some extent the Santa Clara team.
Those are great points, Bruce. I was actually going to bring some of those up too. Something else I'd like to highlight is Sunnyvale went from having one leader who was a superstar to having 3 really strong leaders. So Nick here does the advocacy stuff, which is great, and the policy stuff. We've got Charlene, who's sort of kind of overall leader that helps coordinate a lot of the meetings and does rides. And Hans is here, but Lisa actually, who's not here, coordinates the bike repair stuff. But Hans is a big cheerleader on the rides and on the bike repair. And then I'm there. We've got a bunch of people that aren't all here tonight, but they chip in lots of different ways. So not everyone on the team necessarily sees everyone because people like different stuff. And we've got a lot of things going on. And Sunnyvale also hopes that the bike repair setup we are doing, people can emulate. So San Mateo is doing it. And we're actually changing our bike repair to pair up more with the library more because they actually can fund it and provide a professional mechanic in addition to our volunteers. So that's just really cool synergies happening between the city and the Bike Sunnyvale team. And with this large team, it's really cool how many different points the Sunnyvale team is getting going with themselves and cooperating with Cupertino, Santa Clara, Sunnyvale, Los Altos, Mountain View, Los Altos. It's really cool, the interactions with all the teams. It's going well.
Awesome. Yeah, I want to point out there is a section in the toolkit called Keeping the Team Engaged. That's a theme I think I've been hearing here too, is that people kind of come and go, which is the reality, right? This is all volunteer work. There are times where your paid work gets busy, your family gets busy, whatever it is. And so there is a section for some tips on that. How do we keep each other uplifted and engaged? And how do we keep the conversation going? And part of that is that we all have to do that at some point, is sometimes you're in and sometimes you're out for a little while. And then also a section on recruiting, some recruiting tips on how to bring more people in so that you can share the load. Do we have time for more? Are we at time and should move on?
We can take a couple questions.
I don't see any in the chat, so if anyone has any, feel free to raise your hand. All right, well, hopefully you'll all read through it and have questions for me at a later date. And we'll be putting, like I said, we'll be putting this up on our website, and we'll also be making it a little bit more visually appealing to send out to everyone to use as a packet for keeping your teams as effective and more effective.
Thanks, Heather. And with that, let's move on to the policy agenda. So as I mentioned earlier, the policy agenda is a comprehensive list of policies that SVBC supports and advocates for. We use this as a guide on when we are taking positions or policies on any projects, or when we decide to write a support letter for any project. It is primarily based off of our strategic plan. So as I mentioned earlier, SVBC adopted its strategic plan in the May of last year. The strategic plan identifies 3 main strategies. First is programs, which aims at introducing everyone to the joy of bicycling. Second one is pedal power, which is building the bike movement, which is nothing but working with you all and empowering all of you to go and advocate for the projects, policies that you care for. And lastly, the third one, which is on the screen here, is people-centered communities, which aims at making bicycling the easiest and most obvious transportation choice by creating connected, comfortable bike networks and ensuring that new development is planned around people and not cars. The strategic plan further breaks down all the 3 strategies into key activities. Now, what does the policy agenda do? So the policy agenda is based on this 3rd strategy, which is people-centered communities. It takes each of the key activities which are identified under the strategic, people-centered communities, and breaks those activities into goals, strategies, and metrics to measure progress. And each SVBC or on the website, you'll see several resources and fact sheets to support many of these policies. The policy agenda will include links to these resources as well. There are 5 key activities under people-centered communities. So let's dive into each of these further. The next few slides are going to be very meaty and text heavy, and I might also tend to use a lot of heavy words and jargon. So feel free to interrupt at any point or ask questions in the chat. So this is the first and foremost key activity, which says influence city bicycle plans and policies and build the political support to fund and implement them. Focus on street designs that slow cars, allocate more space for bikes, and fix bicycle hotspots such as highway interchanges. So this key activity primarily focuses on building low-stress bicycle networks, and then also focuses heavily on reducing traffic fatalities, reducing the number of crashes out there. So basically building a safe network of a safe bicycle network to go around places. And these are the goals that are identified under this activity. So basically prioritize low stress bike networks through protected bike lanes, protected intersections, ideal bike boulevards, and I'll come to why we call them ideal bike boulevards in a bit, slow streets, road diets, reducing speed limits, and a Vision Zero policy, which aims at zero traffic fatalities and major injuries across all cities. Now, the earlier policy agenda included bike boulevards, but we're adding the word ideal this time because we've seen that a lot of cities have been putting in a lot of bike boulevards, but are they really bringing in the safety aspect that our members or us as bicycle riders that we care for? Not really. They're just adding on a number or feathers in the cap of like, we did 10 miles of protected, or we did 10 miles of bike boulevards, but you don't really feel safe on these bike boulevards. So whenever any city is coming up with a project that talks about a bike boulevard, we're going to create a checklist that if your bike boulevard contains these 5 things, only then we're going to go and support this project. And we're currently internally working on that checklist of what we want in an ideal bike boulevard, and that is how we're going to support these bike boulevard projects. Now, what are some of the strategies that we're going to work on to achieve these goals? And that includes active transportation improvements funded at city, county, region, and state level, advocate for staff capacity for implementing bike ped plans, and advocate for street design improvements over enforcement as a solution for safe streets. And finally, how will we track progress? So these are some of the metrics, which include how many what are the number of miles of protected bike lanes, built over X number of years, number of bike facilities, number of deaths and major injuries, whether there has been a reduction, increase, and finally, percentage bike mode share in a particular area. Now, this is just one key activity, and similarly, there are 4 more. So I will not go into so much of detail for each of these sections, but I'll just give you an overview of what exactly does that key activity entail. So moving on to the next one, which is creating a network of east-west, north-south bicycle routes with a focus on making El Camino Real safe and accessible. Expedite projects using quick builds, pilots, and relentlessly push agencies to shorten timelines from planning to construction. So basically, the sentence itself speaks for itself. So this is a strategy where we want to focus on prioritizing east-west and north-south bicycle routes. So at least it creates a backbone of commuting in the Bay Area So once these primary corridors are set up, then we can work on connecting corridors or internal corridors to make sure people are able to reach to these north, south, and east, west corridors. El Camino has been a long-standing priority for us. It is the only north-south corridor which has a lot of destinations, which runs all the way from Daly City to San Jose. And it is a hub of housing, a hub for commercials, and a hub for several destinations. Plus, it has seen a lot more collisions compared to the percentage of street ratio it has compared to other streets in the area. So we really want to focus a lot on El Camino Real to make it safe and accessible for everyone. We also want to prioritize or push cities to invest more in quick builds and pilots, so we can get more bike lanes built in a shorter amount of time. And plus, cities do not have to spend thousands of dollars into design and so that they build the right project. Quick build itself is a R&D process, so you can build out something and you can learn in the process and then make those improvements as and when you learn after the project is constructed. So we really want to push cities and agencies to work on quick builds. So these are all the goals, strategies, and matrix that we've identified under this particular key activity. Any questions so far? Okay, hearing none. This is our.
Hey,
Go ahead.
looks like Diana's mic isn't working.
Oh.
Jim Recker wants to know if these slides will be shared to everyone or on the SVBC website.
Yes, the slides will be shared. They'll be put up on the SVBC website, and we'll also share a document of the local team toolkit and this policy agenda separately. All the things that are mentioned or written down here are just brief versions of what is actually in the document.
And then Betsy, this is great because this is a conversation we just had this afternoon. She says, I've occasionally been asked about letters of support for bike projects in my city. They're usually required for funding. How should we be balancing? Yes, we need money for bike facilities here but the ones that are being proposed leave much to be desired.
Anthony, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, so like I said, we had a long conversation this afternoon about this, especially with grant cycles coming up. And I think that we're really going to dedicate our staff time specifically, right, on those projects that do really affect safety in some way. We're talking protected bicycle facilities, proper facilities that'll actually keep people safe rather than just marginal tweaks, paint on the ground type things. So that's really where we're going to be spending our time on. There's also programmatic elements that we're really supportive of, right? Under the Vision Zero umbrella or any other safe routes or any kind of programmatic, including micromobility as well. So I think we're going to be mainly focusing on that. But I think it's very dynamic, Betsy, right? I don't think that we have we don't necessarily have like a rubric that says, does it have this, and this? Yes, yes, no. It really depends on, is this going to improve safety, right? So, yeah.
I want to add the other thing we talked about was really focusing on projects that are going to be going into the ground instead of supporting more planning and more planning and more planning.
Yeah, we were tired of doing, we said enough with the studies, okay? No more studies. We don't need more grants to study things, to know that it's a dangerous intersection or a dangerous corridor.
Come on, say it, Anthony.
Enough with the studies, pour the damn concrete, okay? Watch out, it's gonna be a new podcast.
Betsy, do you have a follow-up question on that? Or if it's a separate one, we can take Charlene's question. Go ahead.
If I can jump in a little bit.
you know, the times that I've been asked, and this may be a function of just how my city does business, it seems like, you know, we have a week to respond and it's a done deal. Do we want this money or not? And that's really frustrating. The other, what was I? There was a second thing and it's not occurring to me. So I'll leave it be. But yeah, what Charlene said in the chat here is, can we ask to have input to the grant writing as a condition for the support, not with 1 week to go on needing the letter to send back. We're just not that with it as a city, and we're just not that with it as a local team. So that's that.
Betsy, I think
Can I-
it's totally
Can I
fair.
ask a question about that? So I know that maybe the first few times, maybe it's hard to get the process down, but are we allowed as volunteers for SVBC to then say, we want to be part of the grant writing, and then, you know, eventually the city can incorporate us in their process, and it won't be just 1 week, it'll be more of it. Will SVBC allow us to say that?
Yeah, I think it's good to start off those conversations with the city right now before any grant writing comes up, to understand what's the process and how involved they are. Yeah, because these things happen and move fairly quickly, and generally during the grant writing process, there's no community engagement portion involved. They generally write grants to get funds for community engagement. So it's good to start off these conversations with your respective city staff and see if they can involve you in part of that process, or at least share that with you in advance.
I would love to be involved further upstream. Our city staff, our city, that department in our city is currently very badly understaffed. So I'm not going to hold my breath, but it's a good suggestion.
Penny? You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you. I think this is where the relationships with staff come in. I mean, I think, you know, hopefully the plan that they're looking for funding for has gone through a process, and hopefully it's been an engagement process that brought in all community members, whether they bike or walk or whatever. But there's an opportunity for us there to say, to express, you know, what we think about the project up front, so that hopefully the project is shaped in a way that we're satisfied with toward the end. I don't think it's generally helpful to say before the stuff is designed, if you don't design it the way I like, I'm not going to support it. That's not collaborative language. It's not cooperative language. And hopefully we're building those kinds of relationships with, you know, our planners and engineers that we depend on so much.
Very well said. Thanks, Penny.
I'm sorry?
I said very well said. Thank you for sharing that. Nick, go ahead.
I would just want to say one of the challenges that we've faced is trying to get with city staff early enough. They're sort of receptive to taking meetings, but they don't have a lot of details. And so we don't even, like, for instance, tonight's Stevens Creek Extension meeting, we may or may not be presented diagrams. And we can't support or not support something that we're only envisioning in our heads. And so we very much, I think, struggle with, we want to engage, but there's nothing to engage on. So
that again links to what Penny mentioned about relationships with your city staff. So at SVBC internally, every 6 months, we rate relationships that we have with city staff. And the way we rate them is the best relationships are those where a city staff will call you and tell you that, oh, this is coming up and this is this relates to your advocacy work, or you should definitely chime in. And they'll probably share insights that these 2 council members are on board, these 2 aren't. You need to get this 5th person's vote to get this passed. So those are the kind of relationships we want our local teams to have with their city staff. And we also try to foster those internally so that we can be the bridge between the city staff and the local teams if that relationship is not present already. So that is where the city staff can share with you, oh, we do not have diagrams, but we'll have them ready and I'll share those with you. Maybe I can't share those over an email, but we can meet at a Starbucks and discuss those. I don't want to quote anyone, but these are conversations we really have with city staff when they don't want to share things publicly, but are open to share things in a one-on-one.
Hey, Sandhya, I'm gonna just break in for time. We're running short, so
thanks, Heather.
this is a great conversation for another time.
Thanks, Heather, for moving us along. So coming back to the 3rd activity identified under the strategic plan, which says advocating for a more integrated trail system that gets people where they need to go and is well maintained and is welcoming. As Heather mentioned in the earlier portion of the local team toolkit, we primarily focus on commuter routes, which get people from one destination to another, and less on rec rider routes or trails. But there are lots of trails which are currently, especially in Santa Clara County, being used as a backbone to create a bicycle superhighway network. And there are lots of trails which people also use to go from one place to another. So we haven't been focused on trails so much. So going forward, we want to work with partners who are already doing this and support their efforts instead of us getting involved in advocating for trail systems already. So there's Guadalupe River Park Conservancy, for example, there's Friends of Stephen Creek Trail, and there's Bay Trails Collaborative. So we want to get involved with the advocacy efforts that they're already doing and support wherever we can. So these are some of the goals that are identified, goal strategies and matrix identified under this particular key activity. Moving us along to the 4th key activity, which is work with community partners to advocate for effective public transit, affordable housing, and smart parking policies so our communities have jobs, housing, and services closer together and within easy reach by bicycle. While our primary goal is getting everyone to ride a bike and advocating for safe streets, advocating for safe streets alone is not going to help us achieve it. There are multiple factors associated with the choice of riding a bicycle. Are the destinations that I want to go to close enough or within bicycle reach? Do I live close to a transit station? Is my workplace within transit station or within bicycle reach from a transit station? Do I have a grocery store in a 10-minute walking distance? Are there policies that discourage use of private vehicles so that folks are encouraged to hop on their bikes and so on? Which means to achieve our ultimate goal of getting everyone on the bike, we cannot work in a silo. We need to work with other partners who are advocating for transit, who are advocating for mixed land use, who are advocating for affordable housing, who are advocating for parking policies, and more. So this key activity essentially describes goals, strategies, and metrics on how we can together advocate for a more urban build-out, such that more people are willing and able to use bicycle as their primary mode of transportation. Essentially advocate for 15-minute cities as a concept where all your destinations are within a 15-minute reach of bicycle, maybe not from your house, but from a transit station. So you can access all your workplace, the grocery store, your friends and others by bicycle. And again, this is a very meaty section because it includes various goals for transit, affordable housing, parking policies, land use, urban build out, transportation demand management, transportation management associations, and much more. So it's again a very meaty section. And finally, here's our fifth and final key activity, which says ensure that emerging technologies such as automated vehicle technology and speed safety cameras incorporate the experiences of people of color, low-income individuals, bicyclists, and pedestrians, and are deployed in a way that advances social equity and safety. We live in Silicon Valley, and if we do not keep up with the emerging technologies, who else will? So while we ourselves as a bicycle coalition are not creating any new technologies, we want to ensure that concerns and needs of the most vulnerable users and populations are addressed in the process. And this is what this particular activity highlights. And so the goals and strategies that are in here. Hi, Jim, did you have any thoughts or comments? So basically, all the policies, strategies, and metrics that are identified here are about making sure that the needs of most vulnerable users and populations are addressed in the process of developing emerging technologies. So that covers the policy agenda. I know it's a lot and it can be super, super overwhelming, but happy to answer any questions.
Sandhya, would you mind showing again the last slide, please? The one showing the new technologies, so I can get a chance to go through that. Perfect, thank you.
And we'll also be sharing this out with you all, so you can review it separately. And we would really, really love your thoughts and comments before we finalize this agenda, this policy agenda for the year.
Well, just related feedback, Sandhya. I think the whole strategy is very, very good, and I actually like point number 4, the one about social equity and so on. So I really appreciate what you're doing here.
Thank you.
I put a question in the chat, but I'll ask it here. Why are we focused on affordable housing? Why is it not high density housing? It's not that I'm against affordable housing. I mean, we desperately need it in the Bay Area, but it seems to take us off track and unfocused, and we have an enormous task already in front of us. If we just focus on high density housing, then it becomes more bikeable.
So it's not just focusing on affordable housing is one of our focus areas, but at the same time, when we talk about mixed land use and smarter policies around land use, that covers high density housing as well. We identify affordable housing as one of those primary policies because of lesser affordable housing in the area, there is a lot of what's the right word? Anyone from the team can take up. People are actually, because it's getting so expensive, people are moving out and away from the areas, and there is lesser concentration of people in our particular communities, and you need higher, denser accommodation around transit to make transit more viable or successful to get more ridership. So getting dense housing is very much, it runs in correlation with affordable housing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I'm afraid you didn't answer my question, because I think that the focus should be on high density housing as opposed to defining it as affordable housing. I think that most affordable housing is high density housing, like Tim Way pointed out in the chat. That's fine, there's a correlation, but it's not the same thing. And I don't think it is Silicon Valley's Bicycle Coalition's goal. It shouldn't be our goal to focus on affordable housing. I think it takes us hopelessly off track.
So I want to just add in, Taylor Pope has a question in the chat that I think would be beneficial to discussion. He's asking if when we refer to affordable housing, are we talking about specific income restricted subsidized housing that often is associated with that term? Or are we just talking about it with like lowercase a affordable? So that includes all that, you know, we need housing that people can actually afford to live in.
We're not particularly talking about a particular class of affordable housing. It covers all which is below market rate and which basically helps people living in the area to live at a more sustainable pace scale. And it is not directly our goal that we're going to leave our bicycle advocacy efforts aside and start focusing on affordable housing or transit related advocacy efforts. Again, here, as I discussed about how we're going to work with trail partners who are already advocating for trail efforts, we're going to do the same here. So when there is any affordable housing group or any transit agency partner or any other advocacy organizations who are primarily working on these efforts, we're going to go out and support them in their efforts that they're already doing and not run those efforts by ourselves.
I think Jim might have been next, and then we have a chat question from Mike Swire.
Jim, you're on mute.
Thank you. One of the things that I'm finding interesting tonight, new to this group, is the diversity of ideas and how it provides too many opportunities to get nothing done. It seems to be a very, very broad agenda. And so my really only question is how can we provide effective feedback to these articles that were presented tonight to shape and make them more focused over the course of the year?
Thanks, Jim. And that actually I should have covered in the introduction, which I clearly missed. So yes, the policy agenda has tons of policies, and we alone as an organization cannot focus on each and every policy and each and every strategy that is mentioned in there. But it is like a list of all the policies that SVBC as an organization supports. And we have 9 local teams, and all teams have different areas of interest. Some might be interested only in the first key activity mentioned in the strategic plan, while others might have 5 things to pick up from each of these key activities. Some might be interested in parking related issues, and some might be interested in working with developers to make sure they have bike amenities included in their plans and projects. So, yes, Tony, did you have a question?
Just continue.
Okay. So that is just a vast list of policies for local teams to pick and choose from. Like, these are the 5 policies or campaigns that we want to work on, which SVBC already supports, and then I can take it from there. And
very good. That was helpful. Thank you.
Can I add, because it relates to the local team toolkit as well. So what if it's in a policy agenda and the team wants to support something, it has a particular specific project, that helps, because then the team knows it's already something SVB supports, and there's less, have to have a discussion on what our position is. If it's not in the policy agenda, that's where we take it up as staff, where we go to the policy advisory committee, where we propose a new policy. So this is a guiding document that says, here are all the things we support. It's not our work plan. So we're not going to be working on all these this year.
And then there was a mechanism, if I understand you correctly, to offer feedback if the policy seems a little bit, well, if there's a desire to change the policy.
Yes, you can provide feedback. We'll share this document with you, and wherever you have feedback, let us know.
Okay, thank you.
Last question.
Yes.
Do we specifically call out opposition to highway expansion projects?
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Do we specifically call out opposition to highway expansion projects?
Yes, we've done that for a few cases, and we want to work on that more closely. But again, since we're heavily relying on all of you to pick and choose your battles or your campaigns, if that is a campaign that your team wants to pick up for a highway expansion project near your city, we're here to back you up. And yes, no highway expansion is as one of the strategies in the policy agenda as well. We are at 6:04. I quickly just want to go over what the plan for our breakout sessions tonight. So since this is our very first Biketivist Forum or local team meeting in the new year, we wanted all of you to spend some time in the local team breakout to review the year 2022. So maybe list down, let's hope you all can begin with what were some of the team wins. Like a team win could be, we had 3 consistent members throughout the year, or a team win could be some campaign that you were running, or that you grew your Google group from XYZ numbers to XY, whatever, ABC numbers. Then what went well, what could be improved, what is the team lacking? And then if your team had a work plan or had identified goals in 2022, then go over each of those goals and assess progress. Maybe use color coding, like red didn't work at all, yellow it's still work in progress, green we accomplished it, or whatever. We would love to hear your reviews about the past year. And after that, then we would encourage you all to start your work planning for 2023. So which goals would you want to carry forward from the past year? Maybe brainstorm on priorities for 2023. And as you're brainstorming on priorities for this year, identify 3 to 5 goals that the team would like to collectively work on. A few things to remember while identifying goals is make sure the goals include short-term campaigns, so that the long wait of running a campaign does not demotivate members in the team. Definitely keep one goal about growing your team, and make sure everyone's interest in the team are represented in those 3 to 5 goals. So I hope all of you can spend some time on these 2 activities in your local team breakouts tonight. Okay, so with